Well, welcome back to another Inside Lansing, and this time we have Arlette Frye, our treasurer from the village. Arlette, thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Let's start talking first about what is the treasurer? What does the treasurer do?
Well, the treasurer is responsible for overseeing the funds of the village. As treasurer, I'm also the village collector. So again, that encompasses collecting all the funds, making sure they're properly deposited, properly accounted for. In the finance department, we maintain the general ledger for the village. So we keep tabs on all the accounting of all the funds. That's, in a nutshell, that is it.
And you said finance department, so you work with a large group of people?
We have 8 staff in the finance department. The front counter individuals, when you come in to pay your water bill or your vehicle sticker license or any of the other fees that are collected, those go through our front counter staff. They are part of our finance department. Then we have our payroll clerk, my accountant who is my assistant. We have the supervisor for the front counter staff who also does utility billing. And then we have the accounts payable clerk and another staff person who also facilitates with the front counter with a certificate of payments. So we do a multiple of things that nobody sees.
It's a lot larger, I'd say, than I would have assumed or other people, to hear that you work with like 8 other people on a daily basis.
On a daily basis.
So I know we're talking about finances and we're talking about the village, so obviously the big thing that people always think about is taxes.
Yes.
And one thing that I think people always question is, why is the village always raising my taxes? But that's not the case, is it?
Well, the village does raise your taxes from time to time, and again, the board is always very cognizant of that. They try not to raise taxes, but again, a significant portion of our revenue comes from taxes. But when you get your tax bill, and your tax bill may have increased, $500, that doesn't mean all of that came from the village. Because if you look at your tax bill, there's a whole list on the second installment of the taxing bodies that are getting a portion of that tax bill. Right. The village really only gets about 15% of your tax bill. So if your tax bill is $2,000, the village only gets $300 of that. Okay. $300 of your tax bill to run the village operations for the whole year.
It's a smaller portion than other line items on there.
Than most people would think.
Than like county, school, parks, stuff like that.
Correct.
Okay. So it's usually not as much as people think it is. Or sometimes you guys don't even raise it when they think that you do.
Exactly. You have to look at your bill. And on the second installment on your tax bill, they do list the current year rates and the prior year rates. So you can see where that comes from. Sometimes your tax bill may increase even if the rates don't, because your assessed valuation increased. Okay. So if your property value goes up, then you're paying a larger share of the overall taxes for the village. That's a good thing if you own your property, that your property value is going up. We all want our properties to increase in value. That's our investment. But the downside of that is you pay a little bit more of the overall burden of the village.
Yeah, but you're going to gain in the end anyways. Exactly. If your property is going up.
Exactly.
So another thing that I think a lot of people have asked questions about the village is restricted funds. Restricted funds being part of things like TIFs and such. Can you explain?
Yeah. Okay, so the village has 20 different funds that we maintain. Okay, so that's part of the finance department. The treasurer's responsibility is to make sure they segregate those funds. Some of those funds have varying degrees of restrictions on them. Okay, TIF districts are restricted funds that can only be used within a certain designated area and for a certain designated purpose. But then we have other funds, motor fuel tax. That's money we get from the state to be used strictly for streets and street maintenance. So those are very restricted. Right. The Department of Transportation audits us on those funds. They are very restricted on those funds. So I guess what people don't understand is they may see certain things going on in the village. The Fox Point development, and it's a multi-million-dollar project. And what I hear is, oh, they're spending millions of dollars on this, but my
Why don't-
street looks like, you know what. But they don't understand that that development is being funded through TIF funds, which is restricted, to that area.
So it sounds pretty much like it kind of sounds like it is, which is restricted to the project or the whatever thing that it needs to be used on. It has to be within that parameter. You can't just spend it on like the street over here or like fixing
Correct.
the fire hydrants over here. If it's been moved by the state or by the village, like it has to be in the.
Correct. And that's why you will see street resurfacing being done maybe in the downtown area, because that's a TIF, okay? And then your street that you live on has potholes. And, you know, it's like, well, if they can fix that, that wasn't as bad as my street is.
Right.
But again, it's because those funds can only be used in that area. Now, with a TIF has a 23-year life. We can request through state legislation to extend that, okay, for another 12 years.
Okay.
Okay, we have done that on some of our TIFs. The Ridge Road TIF, it has been extended.
Okay.
Okay, so that TIF has a remaining life of maybe about 6 years left. Okay, if we don't spend those funds that are generated in that TIF district by the end of that time period, we have to return that back. We have to give that back, and it goes back to all the overlapping tax districts. So the village would get their 15% of it to use in the general fund.
Right.
But it goes back to the schools and everybody else. And it defeats the purpose of what that TIF was originated for.
Which is meant to be used for that area.
For a development
to
in
help.
that area to increase the value of those properties. So when the TIF does expire, now all the taxing bodies benefit from that.
So these TIF districts are in different areas in town. Where are these TIF districts located?
Okay, so we have the Ridge Road TIF, which is the downtown area. Then the West Lansing TIF district, which is off of Thornton Lansing Road over by Chappelle.
Okay.
That area, that sort of industrial area, is the West Lansing TIF district. Those are our two older TIF districts. Both of those TIF districts have been extended, so they're on their last leg of their lives.
Okay.
Then we have the Bernice TIF district. The Walmart is in the Bernice TIF area, and then the Torrance is the newest TIF district, which, as I said, is from about the expressway south to just south of Ridge Road.
How do you determine where TIF is, like that area that?
First of all, you can only develop a TIF in an area that is blighted or in risk of being blighted. We have a consultant come in, and they assess all the properties within the area that we would like to propose for the TIF district. And if it meets the criteria of declining assessed valuation, you know, vacant properties, blighted properties, then it qualifies for a TIF based on state statutes. So then the board will pass a series of resolutions. They come up with a redevelopment plan, they come up with a redevelopment budget, and they determine this is where we want our TIF to be. Okay, at that point, we file those documents with the county. The county takes the assessed valuation and they sort of freeze it. Okay, so it's on record that this is what the assessed valuation was
right.
at the time this TIF was formed. Okay, that's the what they call frozen EAV. All right, that means all the taxing bodies continue to get their tax revenues off of that frozen EAV. Okay, so we're not taking away anything from anybody else.
Right.
Okay, but any increase in assessed valuation in that TIF district now will go into the TIF fund.
It's a bonus in a sense.
Okay, so it comes to the village. It's not general funds. It's not general operations. It's to be used to further enhance and develop that district, that area. So, as in the Torrance Avenue TIF, you know, the village has acquired certain properties that were vacant, that were decaying, so that some we've demolished, some we're still holding. And the intent then is to be able to turn those properties over to a developer who is going to put, for instance, a Walmart. Walmart is in a TIF district, not
Right.
the same one, but it's in that. So we turned property that was very blighted, getting very little tax revenues on, into a multi-million-dollar property through the Walmart
So
development.
really what this is doing, it's incentivizing business growth in a certain area
Yes.
in town.
Yes.
Okay.
With funds that we would not have had
Right.
had we not formed the TIF.
So it's good. I mean, it's a good thing for the village.
It's a very good economic development tool, and that's why they're there. Unfortunately, not everybody understands that.
Right.
And they look at their tax bill, and if the tax bill, for a while the county was putting TIF, if you were in a TIF, they're putting it on your tax bill, so they think they're paying extra taxes.
But they're not.
They're not. It's a reallocation of what they would have been paying regardless.
So ultimately, if they see that, they know that this is really just helping them out without them having to pay more.
Exactly. And, you know, some people think we're taking money away from the schools and other districts, and we're really not. Because if the village did not intervene with that TIF district, those tax funds would not be there.
Okay.
So in the end, it's going to help everybody.
So one thing I kind of want to praise you guys for is that you have to file your TIFs with the state, and that goes to the county. And David Orr saw Lansing and kind of put it out there as the shining example of how to be transparent with your TIFs. So we just want to say that we're proud to have you guys here doing that, and that you guys do a great job. There, Cook County said it.
Thank you.
So we're talking to you about TIFs, we're talking about funds. The big picture thing here is just recently we finished up our 2018 budget. And some people probably don't know what that process looks like. What is the process of like making a budget for the village?
Okay, again, and you know, the budget is really the guideline that the village operates with throughout the year. The budget is what drives the appropriation ordinance. The appropriation ordinance is the legal spending limit for the village. By statute, we're required to have an appropriation budget. By statute, our fiscal year begins May 1st.
Okay.
Okay. By statute, we have to have the appropriation budget filed by the end of July. So we begin the budget process in January.
Yeah.
Okay. And with that, we go to all the departments, and the departments will tell us what they want to do the next year, what they want to spend money on, and they submit their budget forms. I make up a budget form that everybody gets, and then they submit that back. And then I take that and I compile that together for the overall village. Then we look at what our revenue expectations are. And then we say, all right, do we have enough money to cover what everybody wants? You know, typically, no, we don't. Because,
Typically,
you know,
yeah.
again, there are a lot of needs, and nobody is denying that every department needs something they're not getting.
Right.
You know, but we have to look at it collectively, and we have to say, okay, what do we have the funds for? What can we do? And, you know, unfortunately, some years one department may not get something and another department will. Capital needs are a big issue. This year in our budget, we budgeted for a new fire engine. You know, that's $500,000.
Right.
So in any,
It's not a small thing.
it's not a small thing. So in the year you need a new engine, that's a big
You
deal.
get a new engine.
As I said earlier, the village has 20 funds. So we basically have a budget for every fund.
Okay.
Okay. We also will compile the library fund.
Oh, right.
Okay. And let me explain a little bit. The library is not its own taxing district. The library is what we call a component unit. while we will submit the library's appropriation and tax levy with ours, the village board has nothing to do with what that is. The library board, which is a separate elected board, will determine what their budget and their levy request is. And then they submit that to the village, we tack that on with ours, and we submit it to the county. Okay. The park district, they are a separate taxing body.
Right.
So whatever they do has no control over the village. So if they're doing developments in the parks, if they're not maintaining their parks, if you don't like the programming, it is not a village thing.
Right, and I think like a lot of people don't understand it because a lot of municipalities, the parks are underneath their umbrella.
Some municipalities, the park is a department operated by the village
Right.
or the municipality. Some, it's a totally separate district. In some areas, the fire department is a totally separate district.
Right.
It's a fire protection district.
Yes.
For the village of Lansing, our fire department is
our
a
department.
department of the village, so it's incorporated with us. So you have to understand those
You're
nuances.
looking at a much bigger picture than, sometimes I think people give credit for. You have so many departments to look at, and this project takes from January all the way through July, typically.
Yes, so the departments submit their budgets, we review them, we figure out where we need to cut. We'll go back to the departments and say, we need you to cut something, and then it's sort of like a little bit of a give and take a little. We need to cut this out, where do you want to do that? Or, I know you need 4 squad cars, we can only pay for 3.
Right.
Okay, so
Kind of a negotiation process.
yes, it's sort of a negotiation process. The bottom line is that the board has the final say, obviously. And so, at the end, we submit that to the board. The trustees that are in charge of each department will meet with the department in their budget process, so that they understand what that department's asking for, what we're saying from the other side as to why we may and may not be able to accommodate that. And then the board as a whole gets the compiled budget draft.
Okay.
And they review that, and then they approve that, which then will be the approval of the appropriation ordinance.
Sounds as big as a budget would be in this case for a village.
Yeah, it's a long process, and it's a lot of meetings, which can be very draining. Because again, you want to give every department what they want,
Right.
but you just can't do it.
Right. Well, Arlette, I wish I could talk more with you about all of this, but we'll have to save that for another one. But before we do leave, I'd like to just ask you one more question. You've been with us for a number of years already now, and what do you like about being here in Lansing?
Lansing strives to do things very meticulously. From the finance side, the staff is very cognizant that things need to be correct. They want things correct. We go through our audit. Our audit process is very smooth with our outside auditors, and a lot of that is attributed to the professional job that staff does throughout the year. That things are in order, things are organized, so it makes my job easier. So I guess that's one of the things that I like, because I like the professionalism.
You like working with the people you work with?
Yes, I do. We have a good staff. And when you come into the office and you see those girls sitting at the front desk, say hi to them, tell them you appreciate them, because they do work very hard, and they do a great job.
Well, Arlette, thanks again for being on the show.
Okay, thank you.
And thanks again for watching. If you'd like to see more of our programming, please subscribe to us on our YouTube channel.